I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for InvestmentPitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Ryan Berkun, founder and CEO of Teller Finance. Ryan, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me today, Ashton. I'm excited to be here.
You're very welcome. Let's dive into the world of decentralized finance, getting loans, earning interest, getting more people into getting their finances straight, in a decentralized world that has a lot of barriers to entry in the traditional world. Hopefully being able to get people that need capital, the capital that they need without having to go through a million flaming hoops and jumps. And I know that your team is working on some great solutions to help people in the decentralized finance world. So let's just kick off our conversation to start, Ryan, by getting a high-level overview on Teller Finance. What are those specific solutions you're driving into the blockchain world in finance? And then we'll dive into those details.
Yeah, DeFi has been stuck in a world of over-collateralization. Mm-hmm. We've been in a place where you need $150 worth of Bitcoin to borrow $100 of cash. Mm-hmm. And that is both from the over-collateralized platforms of DeFi and some of the more centralized players like a Celsius or a Nexo. Mm-hmm. Or even borrowing with your Bitcoin on Coinbase. Mm-hmm. In order to unlock this next wave of mainstream adoption of DeFi, we need to solve use cases and demand from the borrower side that feel more like traditional finance, that feel more like you're getting a personal loan based on your reputation, or in traditional finance, that's your credit. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want to bring forth to the DeFi community. Teller operates as the back office, as a limit order book, where borrowers can submit requests to borrow. And that could be for any type of loan request. Mm-hmm. So as Teller gains adoption, we really are looking for those entrepreneurs that are thinking about the future of financial technology and where fintech meets DeFi. A DeFi backend saves on operational overhead, it saves on capital efficiency, and it actually scales your lender base, those people that can fill the loan requests. Definitely. So the next generation of fintechs will be focused on their end borrowers, providing a great experience.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Great intro, Ryan. And yeah, you're right. You need a lot of capital to borrow a little amount. And I don't know, maybe that's because they say that it's volatile as an asset for Bitcoin, at least, probably more volatile on smaller assets, but partially because if there's no credit history, like in traditional finance, where they have all your personal information, they sort of see your credit card score building up and know that you're going to be able to repay the loan. In crypto, they don't necessarily have all that information ready at hand for somebody's first loan, especially somebody that hasn't been involved in the traditional finance because they didn't have access to ID or they didn't have enough money to which now they hopefully can get access in decentralized finance. So there's a few things to talk about. You talked about uncollateralization and getting people access to capital without having to put so much up or any, and then a little bit about their credit and how do you monitor this. So let's start with, you mentioned $150 for $100 on some of these main platforms. How does it work for people that are looking to get their first loan and they come to Teller Finance?
So Teller will act as back-end infrastructure for many of these markets. When you're thinking about getting your first loan powered by DeFi, it actually will feel more like traditional finance, as Teller being that underpinning of DeFi for that end user. Mm-hmm. If they were to get a loan in DeFi today, they would be signing up for MetaMask, they would have some type of crypto asset, and they would borrow against it. In tomorrow's world, they would go through an experience that's similar to SoFi or Prosper or any of the major lending platforms that are lean more fintech today. Mm-hmm. So they'll have a nice interface where they enter some information about themselves. Maybe that's personal identifiable information. Maybe that's KYC, something that can bring up a reputation. And likely, just like in the traditional world, if their credit score is being used for part of that underwriting process, then their credit score can be dinged if they do default. And that default, because of the functions of a smart contract, defaults are tracked to the moment that it happens. So any type of consumer credit agency or reporter can see, yes, this individual defaulted and act on that information. So the experience will feel a lot like a traditional fintech. They'll submit their application and the final will be a button that compiles their information If that information is personally identifiable, it'll either be stored privately in that financial technology itself, so with that company, just like it happens today, or as more of zero knowledge proof infrastructure becomes available to the DeFi space, you could see that information actually encrypted and fully private, where the user is not giving up the original information. They're only showcasing the information that they want to show, or maybe they prove a specific data point about themselves. And that will be the flow where once they filled out the request, they submit the loan request, and that's it. And then they're waiting for the loan on the other side.
Very cool. Good to know. And I feel like there's been an ever increasing amount of options for people in decentralized finance to get access to capital. How long has your team been working on Teller Finance, and where exactly are you at right now?
Yeah, so we've been working on Teller Finance for about 2 years. Teller started with this dream that we could unlock unsecured lending in the DeFi space, that we could connect the traditional world of reputation and data to smart contracts. Our first version we launched in May of 2020, and that connected a bank account through Plaid to a smart contract. The bank account allowed for some specific amount of underwriting. So you could see the cash on hand, that could be underwritten, and that could lead to an interest rate on chain, an interest rate from the smart contract. Users who borrowed through that application could use the funds in DeFi specific services. So you could yield farm, you could go trade, very DeFi related. However, as we learned, the borrowing demand is here, it's present. People want access to more capital, not only because the opportunities are present, but because people are fed up with the traditional system and they want something more transparent and they want more options. So that's where we leaned into Teller V2. And that's what we'll be coming out with soon, where we function as this backend for any type of loan request, for any type of use case. And we're helping connect the entrepreneurs who will be interfacing with the borrowers, building out those SoFi-like applications. And as a backend limit order book, we also connect to the lenders, where lenders can see all the different types of loan requests that are coming through the Teller protocol and underwrite the loan requests that they are familiar with, and they see alpha or opportunity to underwrite.
Very cool. And I'm curious, when I think of uncollateralized loans, I think of people that don't have a lot of capital and they need to get access to capital without having to put so much up. But I feel like there's also large institutions and perhaps bigger players that would like capital, and they don't want to have to lock up too much capital either to get access to capital. So with Teller, is there a mixture of retail investors and new people, or people that are trying to get their first loan, as well as big money, or are you catering to a specific audience?
The end borrower will be dependent on the market itself. Teller provides the infrastructure rails as software to enable unsecured lending markets where the opportunities flow through DeFi. The opportunities come onto a smart contract, and anyone with USDC or another stablecoin can lend to those opportunities. That use case, those personas are dependent on the market itself. So absolutely, there are going to be markets that are looking more institutional. They say, hey, this institution has 100 million in AUM. They don't want to lock up that AUM, but they will stake their reputation, where they know that if they default, their reputation will be hit, and there may be compliance consequences to defaulting. There will also be end consumer markets that feel more like a personal loan, something more traditional, where a nerd wallet or a bank rate would direct them to accessing this service. And they'll be filling out a process that may feel more akin to just their credit report being utilized. And I think there's going to be even wild and weird use cases that fall more Web3 as we enter the space of NFTs, as GameFi develops and becomes more mature. But we're seeing players in emerging markets on game applications like Axie earning a daily wage that is greater than their traditional job. Wow. And those players are coming full time into the GameFi ecosystem, the play to earn ecosystem. That can be underwritten. That is a career that traditional finance will not underwrite today. It'll be difficult for them to get access to a bank and a bank-related loan. But DeFi and entrepreneurs that want to serve those markets have an opening, they have an opportunity, and they probably have years ahead of the competition if they start now and start looking at that career landscape for these individuals.
Definitely. And yeah, that's super cool. And I understand, people that are, there's so many new types of jobs, especially since COVID. People are being so creative in how they're earning a wage. And, the bank doesn't always recognize if you don't have a specific boss from this large company, then, your credit isn't as big as them. So there's a lot of imbalances there. So that's great to hear.
They don't. And if you are self-employed, if you run a small business, it's more difficult to get underwritten for a traditional loan. A traditional loan looks at your wages, your W-2, but as work has gone more remote, people are less and less in that bucket of pure W-2. They have income coming from different sources, and they may run their own business now. Totally. And that's something new to underwrite in the ecosystem.
Very cool. I like it, Ryan. And speaking of big players, I saw that Teller Finance recently there was a strategic round from some big players to capitalize Teller Finance further to help grow, and I'm guessing to help push this V2. Can you talk a little bit about that fundraising and how quickly your platform is growing?
Yeah. Our strategic partners came in to help not only advise, but guide how this infrastructure and this software can be integrated into the mainstream applications. So as you noted, Franklin Templeton was a part of our strategic round. They're a $1.4 trillion asset manager. Wow. Toyota Ventures joined our round, Toyota as one of the leading car auto brands. These platforms that run today's financial world are thinking about how DeFi will shape the new economy. They're thinking about DeFi as that infrastructure, the underpinnings for the mainstream environment of financial technology. And at its core, DeFi saves them money. But when DeFi evolves and it's more than just something that is capital efficient, it brings transparency, it democratizes access to financial services, and it actually informs the user. And over time, will bring better interest rates due to increased opportunity for competition in the market. So these financial players today, they are taking note, and they're noticing DeFi is not just a fad, but something that brings valuable business opportunities for them and will open up new opportunities for the end user and their customers. Very
cool. Well said, Ryan. And with that round happening, you mentioned at the beginning V2, new and improved Teller Finance. Can you give any hints into what's that going to look like in the coming months, or in how long that's going to take for the version 2 to come out?
Yeah, the version 2 is actively being worked on. For dates, we will be announcing on Twitter. We'll be announcing through our marketing campaigns. It's coming. And we actually already have pilots that we're working on in the back end that will be parlaying into these different categories of unsecured markets that we've been speaking about. There are markets that have opportunities for the consumer, markets that have opportunities for businesses, and down the line with different types of markets, both in the traditional world and in the DeFi world. It's going to be interesting to see the different adoption cycles that these markets go through, as something more traditional may have more opportunity sets in the immediacy, but may have to scale in a different way. That's something more DeFi native, that maybe the DeFi native world doesn't have as much usage in the immediacy, but can scale automatically, or something in the NFT space. So I think adoption is going to be the key point to focus on as these markets come to fruition. And we will be announcing and circling back when the V2 is live on testnet and then live on mainnet.
Very cool. I will be looking forward to those updates, and I will follow the Teller Finance Twitter for that to get the word right when it comes out. Now, I want to fast forward a little bit to, I know crypto moves quickly and it's hard to predict the future, but 2 to 3 years from now, can you talk a little bit about where you see Teller Finance as well as just the uncollateralized DeFi space growing?
Yeah, we see Teller being this embedded software, this embedded infrastructure on the back end of these unsecured markets. But Teller also combines with the liquidity pools of a TrueFi, of a Maple, Goldfinch, these platforms in DeFi today that have been centered and focused on TVL or AUM in the traditional sense, where they have the liquidity today to plug into these lending opportunities. We see Teller as software that brings forth these opportunities to the liquidity in DeFi today. We also see Teller as the back-end infrastructure for entrepreneurs of tomorrow that want to launch fintechs. If you look at the cost it takes, cost of capital and resources to launch a financial technology application, You have to run two businesses today. You not only are running a software business, you're running a loan order book. So fintechs today are challenged with this idea that they need relationships with the bankers, they need actuaries, underwriters, and an understanding of how to lend out to their specific market. Tomorrow's world of fintechs will be launching markets on DeFi. They'll be running one business. It's just the software part of the business. They won't have to worry about being that underwriter and being the lender, because DeFi on its back end solves that for them. They'll bring in the end users, vet them, verify them. Those end users will request a loan, hopefully through the Teller protocol. And that's where we see Teller fitting in. And DeFi, on the other hand, scales and lends out to these opportunities because that's where the liquidity is today. So we see ourselves as that underpinning, that software that helps run these unsecured lending markets.
Very cool. And thank you for giving that comparison. I think a lot of people, it's hard to understand if you're not running a fintech business, how exactly it all works and the intricacies. And I know it's very complex, and you're dealing with a lot of other people's money as well. So it's very important to be diligent about that. Now, if there are new entrants that are looking to learn more about uncollateralized DeFi, or people that want to utilize Teller, what is the best way for them to learn more and then to get involved?
Yeah, go to our website. We are teller.finance. Follow us on Twitter. We are at UseTeller. We are posting updates with new markets that will be coming out, with our testnet, and new additions to how we're viewing the unsecured space. Also, we do have a podcast. It is called the Fortune Teller Podcast. If you get a chance, please listen in. We talk about, just like on this podcast, how crypto goes mainstream and those use cases of how this world will be transformed and the next 100 million users will come into DeFi.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on the show. All the best with Teller, V2, and everything else in the near future here. And I'm definitely going to check out the podcast as well. So let's follow up in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today, Ashton.